One phone call, 2:47 a.m. Two friends, a secret kept for 3 decades. November 2nd, 1991. Elton John's phone shattered the silence of his London bedroom. He reached for the receiver, groggy and confused. "Hello?" The voice on the other end made his blood run cold. "Elton, it's Freddie. I need you." That phone call would haunt Elton John for the rest of his life, not because of what was said, but because of what it revealed. Behind the greatest performer in rock history was a frightened man who had run out of people to call. And what Freddie Mercury confessed that night, his deepest fear, his most vulnerable truth, Elton kept secret for 30 years. Until 2022, when he finally revealed why that conversation changed everything he understood about friendship, fame, and what it means to truly be there for someone you love. Freddie Mercury and Elton John weren't just colleagues. They were brothers in a very exclusive, very lonely club. People who understood that being loved by millions doesn't mean you're not alone. Their friendship began in 1975 at a music awards ceremony. Freddie had just delivered a performance that left everyone breathless, theatrical, powerful, impossibly grand. Backstage, Elton watched with equal parts admiration and envy. When they finally met, Elton extended his hand. "Bloody brilliant, Freddie." Freddie smiled that famous gap-toothed smile and replied, "Darling, you're not so bad yourself. Let's not compete. Let's just be fabulous together." Later that night, they found themselves on a hotel balcony overlooking London, sharing champagne and honest conversation. "Do you ever feel like you're performing even when you're not on stage?" Elton asked. Freddie nodded. "Every single day, darling." "It's exhausting," Elton said, "being who everyone expects you to be." "Exhausting," Freddie agreed, "but necessary, because if they see the real us, the scared, insecure parts, they might not love us anymore." That moment became the foundation of their 16-year friendship. They didn't need to explain themselves to each other. They just understood. In 1987, Freddie Mercury received news that would shatter his world. HIV positive. He told almost no one. Jim Hutton, his partner, knew. Mary Austin understood. But to the world, Freddie remained the invincible performer. The disease progressed slowly. Freddie continued recording, continued being Freddie Mercury. But behind closed doors, the fear was growing. "I've spent my life building this persona," Freddie told Jim one evening. "The fearless frontman. And now I'm terrified of everything." "It's not an act," Jim said gently. "It's part of you, just like Farak is part of you." "But which part is real?" Freddie asked. "Both," Jim said. "You're both." By 1990, people began noticing. Freddie looked thinner, tired. Brian May watched with concern, but Freddie waved him off. "Just a bit under the weather, darling." The truth was complicated. Freddie was living in two worlds, still recording powerful vocals for Queen's Innuendo album, yet spending hours in bed, too weak to walk some days. Brian May later recalled, between takes, he'd sit down immediately, conserving energy. Yet when that recording light went on, he became Freddie Mercury again. It was remarkable and heartbreaking. Meanwhile, Elton John was in rehab, fighting his own demons. Reading a newspaper, he saw speculation about Freddie's health and called immediately. He called immediately. "Freddie, are you okay?" Freddie's voice was bright, perhaps too bright. "Elton, I'm perfectly fine." Elton didn't push. He knew Freddie would talk when ready. By late 1991, Freddie rarely left Garden Lodge. The man who commanded Wembley was now confined to his bedroom. Phone calls from old friends stopped. People were scared of AIDS, scared of association. And Freddie Mercury discovered what real terror felt like. Dying alone despite being known by millions. That's when he reached for the phone. November 2nd, 1991. Elton John was sleeping when his phone rang. The clock read 2:47 a.m. "Hello?" "Elton, it's Freddie." The voice was weak, trembling, nothing like the Freddie he knew. Elton sat up immediately, his heart racing. "Freddie? What's wrong?" There was a pause, a breath, and then, "I'm scared, Elton. I'm so fucking scared. And you're the only person I can tell." Elton felt his throat tighten. "Talk to me, I'm here." I'm dying, Freddie said simply. Everyone suspects, but I'm telling you now, I'm dying. And Elton, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be brave anymore. His voice cracked. Do you know what it's like to be surrounded by millions and feel completely alone? I've performed for queens. I've filled stadiums. But right now, in this bed, I'm just Farak. And Farak is terrified. Elton was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face in the darkness. Everyone thinks Freddie Mercury is fearless, Freddie continued. They think I'm this god on stage. But I'm not. I'm terrified of the pain, terrified of losing myself, terrified that when I'm gone, all anyone will remember is that I got sick, not that I lived. Freddie, Elton said, his voice thick with emotion, you're not weak. Being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But I can't tell anyone else, Freddie whispered. If I do, they'll pity me. They'll see me as the sick guy, not the performer. So I'm alone, Elton. Even surrounded by people who love me, I'm alone with this fear. There was a long silence. Elton could hear Freddie's labored breathing through the phone. You know what the worst part is? Freddie asked. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of being forgotten. I'm afraid that my music, my performances, everything I created will be overshadowed by how I died. Elton remembered that conversation on the balcony in 1975 about masks and survival. Freddie, listen to me. You're not a mask. You're not a performance. You're the most authentic person I know because you've always had the courage to be exactly who you are. But who am I, really? Freddie whispered. Farouk Bulsara from Zanzibar? Freddie Mercury, the rock star? The dying man in this bed? I don't even know anymore. You're all of those things, Elton said firmly. And you're my friend, the person who understood me when no one else could, the one who showed me that it's okay to be both fabulous and frightened at the same time. Freddie's breath caught. Do you remember that night in 1975, on that balcony? Of course I do, Elton said. You asked if I ever felt like I was performing even when I wasn't on stage, Freddie said, and I told you every single day. But Elton, right now in this moment, I'm not performing. This is the real me, scared, vulnerable, needing help. I know, Elton said softly, and I'm honored that you trust me with this, with the real you. Elton's voice was firm despite his tears. Freddie, listen to me. You will never be forgotten. Not for how you died, but for how you lived, for the joy you gave people, for the courage you showed every time you stepped on stage. Do you really believe that? Freddie asked quietly. I know it, Elton said, because you changed my life. You showed me what it means to be fearlessly, unapologetically yourself. That legacy doesn't die, Freddie. It lives forever. Another pause. Then Freddie's voice softer now. Thank you for answering. Thank you for not judging. Thank you for just being there. Always, Elton whispered. Always, Freddie. I have to go, Freddie said. Jim is calling, but Elton, when I'm gone, will you remember me? Not as the sick guy, but as your friend, the one who understood you. Every single day, Elton promised. Not as the legend, as my friend, as the person who knew what it was like to wear the mask. I love you, darling, Freddie said softly. I love you too, Freddie, Elton replied. The phone clicked. The line went dead. Elton sat in the darkness for hours, crying, unable to move. He had just heard his friend's final confession, the real Freddie Mercury, not the performer, but the frightened human being behind the sequins and bravado. November 23rd, 1991. Freddie Mercury released a public statement. I wish to confirm that I have been tested HIV positive and have AIDS. 24 hours later, he was gone. Elton learned of Freddie's death while watching television. The BBC announcer's voice. Legendary Queen frontman Freddie Mercury has died. He turned off the TV and sat in silence. He didn't cry. He just sat, remembering that phone call, remembering Freddie's voice. I'm so scared. When Jim Hutton called an hour later to tell him officially, Elton simply said, I know. I know. The funeral was small, private, only the closest friends. Elton stood among the mourners, Mary Austin, Jim Hutton, Brian May, Roger Taylor, John Deacon, and thought about that phone call. He trusted me with his most vulnerable moment, Elton thought, and now it's my responsibility to honor that trust. The service was held at West London Crematorium, a modest venue that felt strangely appropriate for a man who had performed at the world's grandest stages. There were no television cameras, no press, no fans, just the people who had actually known Freddie, not the legend, but the man. During the service, Mary Austin spoke briefly about Freddie's kindness. Brian May said a few words about his genius, but Elton couldn't speak. If he opened his mouth, he knew he would tell them about the phone call, about Freddie's fear, about the words "I'm so scared" that kept echoing in his mind. So he stayed silent, honoring the promise he'd made to himself, to protect Freddie's most vulnerable moment, to carry it privately, with love. After the service, Jim Hutton approached Elton. His eyes were red from crying, his face drawn with exhaustion and grief. "He talked about you a lot in those final weeks," Jim said quietly. "He said you were one of the few people who truly understood him." "He understood me too," Elton replied, his voice thick with emotion. "He told me about a phone call," Jim continued. "He wouldn't tell me what you talked about, but he said it helped him, said it made him feel less alone." Elton nodded, unable to speak. "Thank you," Jim whispered, "for being there when he needed you, for listening." That meant everything to him. For 30 years, Elton John never spoke about that conversation. Not to journalists, not to biographers, not even to his closest friends. Because Freddie had given him a gift, the gift of seeing the real person behind the legend. And Elton honored that gift with silence. In 2022, Elton John sat down for a deeply personal interview. He was 75 years old, reflecting on his life, his career, his friendships. And for the first time, he decided to share the truth about that phone call. "Freddie called me a few weeks before he died," Elton said, his voice breaking. "It was 2:47 in the morning, and he said something I'll never forget. 'I'm scared, and you're the only person I can tell.'" The interviewer sat in respectful silence as Elton continued. "That call lasted maybe 30 minutes, but it was the most honest conversation we ever had. He told me he felt alone. He told me he was terrified. He showed me the person behind the performer." Elton wiped his eyes. "People think fame means you're never alone, but Freddie taught me the opposite. Fame makes loneliness louder. It amplifies every fear, every insecurity. And the only cure is real friendship, the kind where someone can call you at 3 a.m. and say, 'I'm scared,' and you just listen." "Why did I keep it secret for 30 years?" Elton asked rhetorically. "Because Freddie trusted me. He showed me his most vulnerable moment, and I owed it to him to protect that. Not to use it for headlines or attention, but to carry it privately, with love." "I miss him every day," Elton said quietly. "Not the legend, not the performer. I miss my friend Farouk, the guy who called me in the middle of the night because he needed someone who would understand. That's the Freddie I remember." The interviewer asked, "What did that phone call teach you?" Elton smiled through his tears. "That real friendship isn't about the good times. It's about answering the phone at 3 a.m. It's about holding space for someone's fear without trying to fix it. It's about being there, fully present, when someone needs you most." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "You know, after that call, I went through my own phone contacts. Hundreds of numbers, famous people, industry connections, people who'd want to hear from Elton John. But how many of them could I call at 3 a.m. and say I'm scared? Maybe 5, maybe fewer." That's when I realized what Freddie had taught me. Fame gives you 1,000 acquaintances but very few friends. And the real measure of a successful life isn't how many people know your name. It's how many people will answer the phone when you're falling apart. The interviewer leaned forward. "Do you think Freddie knew how much that call would mean to you?" Elton nodded slowly. "I think he did, because he also gave me a gift that night, the gift of being needed, of being the person someone trusted with their deepest fear. That's sacred, you know, to be chosen as someone's safe place." "After Freddie died, I went through a very dark period," Elton continued. "I questioned everything about my life, my choices, my relationships. But that phone call kept me grounded. It reminded me what actually matters. Not the fame, not the money, not the accolades, just being there for people you love. Freddie gave me that gift, the gift of showing me that beneath the fame, beneath the costumes, we're all just human beings, looking for someone who will listen when we're scared. Today, Garden Lodge still stands in Kensington, London. Fans leave flowers and tributes at its gates, remembering Freddie Mercury, the performer, the man who sang Bohemian Rhapsody, who commanded Live Aid, who became one of the greatest frontmen in rock history. But inside that house on that November night in 1991, something else happened. Something the world never saw. A man named Farouk Bulsara picked up the phone not to call millions, but to call one friend. And that friend answered, because that's what real friendship is, not the glamour, not the parties, not the public appearances. Real friendship is answering the phone at 2:47 a.m. when someone you love is scared and alone. Freddie Mercury taught the world how to perform, how to command a stage, how to turn music into magic. But he taught Elton John something far more important: how to be vulnerable, how to trust, how to say, "I need you," when the mask becomes too heavy to wear. And 30 years later, Elton John still carries that phone call not as a burden, but as a gift. Because Freddie Mercury's final gift wasn't a song, it wasn't a performance, it was trust. The trust that comes from showing your true self to someone who will honor it, protect it, and remember it with love. In the years since revealing that conversation, Elton John has spoken about how it changed his approach to friendship. "I'm more intentional now," he said in a follow-up interview. "I check in on people. I call friends just to say, 'I'm thinking of you.' Because I learned from Freddie that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you need someone." He also talks about it with young artists who struggle with fame's isolation. "They come to me asking how to handle the pressure, the loneliness, the constant performance," Elton shared. "And I tell them Freddie's story. I tell them it's okay to take off the mask with someone you trust. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to need people. Because that's what Freddie taught me in his final days, that asking for help isn't weakness. It's the most human, most courageous thing you can do." That phone call at 2:47 a.m. became the most important conversation of both their lives. It proved that real connection doesn't happen on stages or in headlines, but in quiet moments of honesty between two people who truly see each other. Freddie Mercury found that person in Elton John, and Elton John spent 30 years honoring that trust, carrying the memory of his friend, not as a tragedy, not as a headline, but as a reminder that beneath the fame and the fortune, we're all just human beings who need someone to answer the phone when we're scared. That's the real story. That's what matters. That's what Elton John protected for 3 decades. The knowledge that he gave his friend the greatest gift anyone can give, the safety to be afraid, to be vulnerable, to be simply beautifully human.